Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of three. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing up baby is about to get a little easier. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Ashley Cooley, owner of Birth Baby Sleep. And in today's episode, we're diving into the topic of low intervention births. We're talking about what they are, what it means to have a low intervention birth, common misconceptions, what preparing for a low intervention birth could look like, how to navigate hospital policies that might make it harder to have a low intervention birth. And I just want to say up front, this isn't about saying one type of birth is better than another. My goal is simply to share information so that you can make the choices that feel right for you. And as always, the reason why we have this podcast is a way to get out extra information, content that maybe I otherwise am not able to or can't in prenatal classes or on Instagram or on our website. So I just find that in a prenatal class, everyone is coming at this from such a different lens, different experiences, different backgrounds, different desires and hopes and dreams, all the things. So with that being said, try to make it all encompassing for everyone and sharing that information. But sometimes there are some more details that we can get into specifically around low intervention births because it's not the norm anymore, at least not in our society here. We're in Canada, we're in North America. It doesn't seem to be quite the norm as much anymore. So I reached out to my friend Liz Burns. She's a doula and is the founder of Driftwood Doula, a group of passionate, experienced, and heart-led birth workers offering support through pregnancy, birth, and early parenthood. They're a team of 4 made up of 3 doulas and 1 photographer, and they each bring a unique blend of skills, life experiences, and personalities to create a deeply personalized and compassionate approach to care. So we're going to chat to Liz. We're going to talk about low intervention births, what they are, what they aren't, and so much more. And as always, if you have any questions or want to continue on these conversations, please feel free to reach out anytime. You can email me at ashley@birthbabysleep.ca, or you can find us on our website, birthbabysleep.ca, and on our podcast tab, there is a section where you can ask some questions and chat with us. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Liz. When you hear the term low intervention birth, because that's what we're talking about here today. So we're going to get clear on what we mean by that, because it could mean different things to different people. So what does that actually mean to you as a doula?
That's a great question. So I think I was thinking about this beforehand and thinking how it means so many different things to different people. So as a doula, I have my own values and what I might want for my own birth, but I need to make sure whenever I'm meeting with a client that there's clarity on what it means for them. So for me, I would feel that a low intervention birth is minimizing pain medications and also minimizing hospital interventions like induction, the use of assisted vaginal birth, things like forceps and vacuum. But to someone else, it might just mean they really, really don't want to be induced, or they're okay with being induced, but they don't want to have pain medications. So always starting kind of from the ground level of what does that term mean to you. There's not really a unified definition, so it's just so important to understand what people are wanting from their birth, meeting people where they're at, and also understanding why it's important to them. So I always kind of, there's many reasons why someone might want that, and I think that being able to dig into why people want that helps me really understand why and how I'm going to support that, and where that kind of belief system for them has come from.
That's such an important point because, like, where are they getting their information? Is this because of things that they've learned or things they've experienced or all kinds of things? That's such a really important point. So, low intervention meaning not necessarily a quote unquote natural childbirth where we might be talking about like zero medications or anything, but whatever that looks to a certain person, individual, but minimal.
Yeah.
what would be some common misconceptions that you hear or know about with low intervention births? Is it just that like, oh, we're talking about a natural childbirth necessarily, or
Yeah. And I think also kind of a big misconception is that, lots of people out there are doing it. They're really not. So when I found out the statistics at the hospital here, for epidurals in 2022, 98% of birthers had an epidural. And then
98?
98, yeah.
Wow.
I know, isn't that
Wow.
amazing? And
That's
then in
wild.
2023, it came down slightly to 85%. I don't have the stats for 2024, but really, yeah, here in Nova Scotia, and I would also say North America, the vast majority of people are having epidurals these days. I think that's a very cultural thing. Like it's very different wherever you go in the world.
Yeah.
I think those statistics are, I don't know, I don't have them, but I think those statistics are lower in the UK. And I grew up in the UK. And I think there's just more conversation about ways to support people without them, without epidurals. Whereas I think here, and rightly so, I think there's kind of been a conversation around, well, we have this incredible tool to take away pain. Why would we not use it? Which,
Right.
that makes sense. And if that's your
Yeah.
value, amazing. Then that's, do that. And that's how you'll have a really empowering, amazing birth. I think that the other thing that comes into everything and everything I teach and how I support my clients is talking about, okay, but let's talk about the pros and cons. Like, why are people, again, we're coming back to why, but why are people making the choice not to have one? Does an epidural mean that this, and this are more likely? Does an induction mean that this is more like kind of picking out all the pieces and understanding the journey and understanding how a person's going to feel afterwards. So for me personally, I felt like I would feel very, very disappointed afterwards if I had an epidural. That's not the case for the majority of people, I would say. Like a lot of people are like, I would feel disappointed if I didn't have time to get one because it's
Hmm.
important to me that I have one. So that's kind of one misconception is kind of that idea around how often people are having epidurals, why they're having them. Um, Reasons for induction. So that's another thing that people kind of, I think there's a lot of rumors or TikTok talk about.
Yeah.
um, and then I guess the other big misconception is that some people think that people who don't have epidurals, it's kind of hippie or there's some kind of, I don't know what the right wording for it is, but kind of belief that everything should be natural, quote unquote. I'm doing air quotes, even though you can't see
Yes.
me on the podcast.
We do that all the
um,
time.
yeah, exactly. I think I did that last time I was on your podcast, like doing my air quotes and then realizing no one can see.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that you're kind of anti-medical. Now, again, like when I talk of cases or particular stories, I keep them anonymous, but sometimes it's just easier to talk about myself because I don't mind sharing my own stories. And I'm not anti-medical at all. Like I grew up in a household where my mom was a nurse, my grandmother had been a nurse. Everything in our household was very medical. If you had a headache, you took Tylenol. Like, we grew up
Hmm. Hmm.
not in this quote unquote hippie hippie medicated world, but birth was just different to me. I didn't see it as medical. And I think that some people think that there's this belief that if you don't want to have an epidural, you're anti-medical. You also might be an anti-vaxxer or that kind of thing. And
Right. Yeah.
that's not the case. Like they're very distinct things.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the why, I always ask people, what is your reason for not wanting an epidural or not wanting to be induced or not wanting vacuum forceps, not wanting to go to C-section? And everybody has different values around it. Some people will talk about things like wanting to have affirmations around women have done this since the beginning of time. This is a
Hmm.
completely normal physiological phenomenon. And other people will say, oh, I would feel disappointed if I had an epidural, or I'd feel disappointed if I had to have some kind of assistance in birth. And other people don't feel they'd feel disappointed. They just feel like, well, I really want to try and do what's best physically for me. I want my baby to have a gentle entry to the world. Like there's so many different things that come into it. So I think that kind of connects with the misconceptions piece as well.
Absolutely. I remember my own experiences with my first delivery. I remember that being in the moment of like, whoa, these contractions are really strong and I'm struggling to cope through them. And I remember this period of time where I was on the fence, like, do I want that epidural? Do I not? I feel like are we
Mm.
supposed to not? Like, is that and
Yeah.
I don't want drug, air quotes, drugs to get to my baby. Like, it was so it's such a weird, like, how is this the only time I'm thinking about this right now?
Yeah,
Um, and actually, and then fast forward to my third birth, where it was a low intervention birth. I guess you could say it was a natural birth. But when I get asked about that in prenatal class, when people know that I've had epidurals and some interventions for some labors and not with another, I always will preface by saying, like, there's not one that was better than the other. I wouldn't say that when I had a
right,
low intervention birth that I wish that I had had those prior to with my other ones, but it was what I knew. It was my
right,
experience being in the delivery room. It was things that occurred in other labors that I thought, oh, I'd love for that to look differently. So
right.
there's so much that goes with it. Like you said, the why is such an important piece. What does
Mhm.
it come like? What does preparing for a low intervention book birth look like? I know what it looked like for me, and that big time was education. And
Yeah,
actually having had the experience in the delivery room is one thing, but the way I prepared for labor with my third child was vastly different. So I'm
mhm.
sure that you'll probably agree that that's maybe one of them, but what are some other ways that we can prepare? What does that look like for preparing for
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's kind of different parts of preparing. There's preparing your body physically, and there's preparing your mind and your emotional kind of feelings around it. There's also preparing the people around you, so who's going to be there for you when you're in
one?
labor.
Mm,
To start with kind of like physical things, I have a kit of tools that I carry with me, and I encourage people to do the same. So we can talk about the five senses and kind of distracting all five of those senses when you go into labor. So physical touch, so things like a TENS machine. For those who don't know what that is, it's like a little machine that creates an electrical stimulus through your skin, so it kind of is tingly. I describe it as feeling like that feeling when you're getting pins and needles, apart from without the unpleasantness of wanting it to go away. It's kind of nice to
Yes,
have
that's a great.
them.
Yeah, I explain it as like a static almost, like what you would
Yeah,
think static would feel like on you. Anyway,
right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's
Those are
just a
great.
really good distraction technique from distracting from the contractions to have the pads placed on your back. So that's a good one. Heat and cold. So again, lots of people, I think, before they go into labor have an idea of like, oh, I usually run hot, so I'm going to want cold. That's not always right. Like in labor, sometimes it
You're
kind of
gonna
flips
run
on its
hot and
head.
cold at many
You know,
different
hot and
times.
cold, and 1 minute you want one, and 1 minute you want the other. Yeah. And that's, I
Yeah.
mean, that connects really nicely to the partner piece too, which is like whoever is
Be
with you in
prepared.
the labor room, yeah,
Yeah.
whoever's with you in the labor room, just be prepared for the fact that you might experience your partner being like, I want this, no, I want that, and it shifts really quickly. And then it's not a reflection of you not doing a good job. It's just that in labor things shift and you need
Yes,
something
it
different at
happens.
different moments, right? Yeah. Um, yeah, so that, and so kind of things on your skin, we use the comb trick, so squeezing on combs, again, like another, just literally hair combs, another distraction from the contractions. Hip squeezes, counter pressure, so pushing against the pressure that you're feeling. Usually that's best for back labor. So when you have pain in your back, using kind of the heel of your hand or a ball to push against that. So that's a great trick for a partner to do. And then we've got things like scent. So at the hospital, there is a anti-scent policy, but we can kind of work around that a little bit in that sometimes I'll be like, let's peel an orange. And that creates like a nice smell in the room, but
Ooh,
it's not something that
nice.
lasts.
Nice. How are they? Can
um,
I ask, Liz, how are they with like essential oils and stuff? I know that's still a scent, but sometimes that
yeah,
can be considered like it's less of a chemical
yeah,
issue than it would be like, oh, I'm spraying Febreze or cologne or something in the
yeah,
room.
totally.
Do they allow
Um,
that usually,
I
or is
think
that
on paper, no. But I encourage people, like, if you just bring a tiny little cotton ball and put a tiny bit of essential oil on it, it's only going to be you that can smell it if you have it close to your face. Like, it's not going to make the
sure?
whole room
Okay.
smell.
Yeah.
So we push the boundaries a little bit, maybe, to make people comfortable. And I think the research shows really that aromatherapy, so using scents, only really works in early labor anyway. There's not much evidence to show that it works in active labor. So by
Ah,
the time
okay.
you're in the birth unit, which is usually when you're in active labor, it may not be so beneficial anyway. So that might be something you're either using at home or sneakily using in the early labor assessment
Right.
unit when there's a
Okay. Okay.
nursing. Yeah. Um, and then sounds. So your next sense is like sounds, how things sound around you. Some people are very overwhelmed by lots of noises when they're in labor. So some people will just want to put earbuds in or earplugs so they can't hear what's going on around them. Or you can have like affirmations playlists. Spotify and Apple Music and everything have all their many different great playlists. You can have your favorite music. You can just have like spa noises, whatever you need to kind of create that more calming atmosphere around you. How things taste. So this is another one that's important to talk about with relation to the hospital. So the hospital here has a policy that once you're in active labor or you have an epidural, you cannot have solid foods anymore. You can only have clear fluids. So that's like broth, tea, popsicles, jello. That's not actually evidence-based. So there is a push to change that at the hospital here, but it hasn't happened yet. Some of the more experienced nurses will be like, you're not supposed to eat here. I just have to pop out for a second and kind of turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
But there is some conversation around that. So if you are able to eat in early labor, do it, because that's when you really can eat with no one frowning upon it. And then later in labor, if you are eating, I would just say like lightly flavored things. People can get nauseous during labor. Quite commonly, people get nauseous. So just have things that are lightly flavored to keep up your energy levels. And again, that's a distraction. Like anything that has a taste is a distraction from labor. And then now I'm forgetting what the final sense is. Seeing, what can you see? So dimming the lights. We know that oxytocin and melatonin work together. So if the lights are dimmed, your body's more likely to boost up those hormones that help labor progress. So when I get to a birth, I usually turn all the lights off and I carry battery-powered candles and little twinkle lights, and we'll make it feel cozy. So those are kind of your physical tools for what help you during an unmedicated labor. And then there's other things like breathing and visualizations. Having your team really on board. So by that, I mean like you have a really good relationship with your doctor or midwife. You feel comfortable saying what you feel with them and not feeling like you have to people please or tread delicately. It's really, this is about you. You are having a baby. You are the one experiencing the intensity of it. And you need to be able to say what you want in that moment. If you decide to have a doula, then really making sure that you interview a few different ones and you feel really connected with the one that you choose. And that you have the education piece. So doulas provide education. We usually do it one-on-one before your due date, or sometimes we do classes. And if you decide that a doula is not for you, because a doula is not for everybody, then doing the education piece for sure. So for those who want to have a low intervention birth, making sure that you have that pre-education and you're learning about kind of what the different interventions are used for, when they're used, what the research around them is, whether you're really being pressured into having an induction because there is a really genuine high risk, or if it's more just related to fear. And there's definitely this piece of liability in our culture, right? Of like, we're recommended to do things because what if you don't? And so really looking at the statistics of, okay, what is my real risk here? I think tangibly too, kind of comparing it to things like, for me, definitely, you know, I'm not super a numbers person. Math was never my thing. So being told your chance is like 1 in 1,000, I was like, okay, I got to try and imagine like how many people are at a Taylor Swift concert, or like try to get my head around how many people are 1,000.
But yet we'll all think that like, ooh, but I'm that one. I could be that one. So it doesn't, it almost doesn't matter. Yeah.
And sometimes it's better to flip it on its head and be like, okay, there's also like 999 out of 1,000 chances that it's not going to happen to me. Like kind of flipping the statistic the other way. Or thinking of things like, imagine connecting it to something that you can tangibly imagine. So things like, the statistic of me going and having this intervention is the same as the statistic of me getting in a plane crash, which is very, very low, right? Trying to compare it to something that you know is unlikely. That helped me anyway to make it more tangible.
Sure.
So those are kind of the main prepping things. And then the final thing I would say is like really preparing your body. If you know you have a history of a certain injury, like I had a SI joint injury, so a injury kind of near my tailbone. And I knew that was going to be a problem. So really working hard to address that issue. I do find that sometimes when you go to a physio or a doctor and you're pregnant, they kind of say like, oh, you're pregnant, this will go away afterwards. And it kind of gets brushed aside of like, oh, we'll deal with that afterwards. But really there's no reason you can't address those things with the support of a physio and making sure that you're doing exercises that will strengthen that. The opposite's true too, where you're making sure you're doing exercises where you'll release certain areas that might be tight. So some doulas are trained in that. Physiotherapists certainly are. So if you
Hmm.
know you kind of have an Achilles heel or a problem area, quote unquote, working on that, because the baby can kind of descend through the pelvis in certain ways, depending on what side is tight and what side is not. So we really kind of have
Mm.
quite a lot of control over that too, but a lot of us don't know that.
You don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I think the moral of the story is that preparation is really key. If you
Mm.
want to see your labor go a certain way, as much as possible, like because unpredicted things can happen and whatnot, but planning is key, preparation is key, not just the
Yeah.
physical stuff, but the mentality, and preparing your body for that. So speaking
Yeah.
of all of this, we're talking a lot about the birthing person, but what about partners? What's their role in this?
Yeah. Yeah, we
Where I
really
think
touched
they have
upon
a
that.
really big role in this actually,
Yeah.
and I love getting to show
Huge.
partners. So here's what you are going to do.
Yeah.
Get ready. So yeah, what
Yeah.
what are some what roles can partners play in this?
Yeah. So again, the education piece, any prenatal classes you go to would usually include the partner too. You go, you learn together. There might be parts like any lesson you have or lecture or whenever you're in any kind of education environment, there'll be parts that you remember and parts that your classmate remember, and you might not remember the same pieces. So having two of you there as a team is really crucial. Um, I also want to mention Penny Simkin here. Penny Simkin passed away last year, but she was an amazing doula. She founded one of the big doula training companies here in North America. And she has some amazing resources online, one of which is the Take Charge routine, which I know, Ashley, I think I first learned about it from you, actually, because I
Oh
did
yeah.
with you when I was pregnant years ago.
We
Yeah.
love our Penny Simpkin
Yeah, we love our
resources.
penny
Yeah.
Simkin. And now that's something I give to partners. So this take charge routine is basically about being very direct, engaged with the person who's birthing. Sometimes it can kind of feel when you're in labor that you're out of control, like there's things happening to your body that you're like, okay, I just need a break for 5 minutes, and you're not going to get that because your body just keeps contracting. And so making you feel more in control by showing you that those around you are calm, they're collected, they can give you direction, they can let you know that everything you're experiencing is completely normal. So that take charge routine, I'm sure you can find it online, or I'm sure Ashley can link it,
I'll
but
link
that's
to it.
great.
I'll link to
Okay,
it. Yeah.
great. Yeah, it's a great tool. Then also Penny Stinkin had this really amazing roadmap of labor. And in it, the main thing I love about it is she talks about the 3 R's:
Hmm.
rest, ritual, rhythm. I always go on and say there's more R's, there's rhythm, there's lots of R's, but kind of having this connection to having some kind of ritualistic nature to your birth. And again, that can sound really hippie and out there, but it's about getting a sense of control when you don't have control over your contractions. So it's having this idea of, okay, yeah, my contraction is going to come and I don't have a control over that, but I can control what I'm doing during it, or I can control that. Okay, I'm going to sit for 3 minutes and then I know I'm going to need to get up and walk around. If you're at home, it might be like pacing around the kitchen island. For me, that was mine. I'm mentioning that one because that was mine. Our countertop is stone. So it was really grounding for me to hold onto the stone at the peak of my contraction. So I would
Mm.
sit on the bar stool, chatting in between, and then I would stand up, do 3 loops of our kitchen island. And that was around when I'd reach my peak. I'd hold onto the cold at the peak, and then I'd let go and do my 3 loops again. And that routine, again, it sounds very like ritualistic and kind of rigid, but that helped me stay in control of, okay, I know that I'm going to have this contraction over by the time I've done this routine. And it helped me feel so much more in control. TENS
Mm.
machines are great for that too, because you kind of bump up the intensity of the TENS machine at the beginning of a contraction. That kind of is your bookend. So it marks the beginning and the end of your contraction, and that helps you have some sense of control over it.
Mm.
So that's another great Penny Simkin tool. And then the third one, which is, and I'm bringing these up in the partner part because this is something that the partner can remind of, like really being the person to take charge, being the person to remember, okay, we're going to get into this routine. And the final one is the pain scale. And the Penny Simkin pain scale is kind of a measure of how strongly you feel about having medications or not. It just uses the word medication, but it's something I usually use for epidurals. And it's kind of a scale of +10 to -10, and you mark yourself on how strongly you feel about it. And then it gives on the second column, it gives ideas based on your number on how your partner or healthcare team can support you. So
Mm.
again, really tangible resources. It's just a single printout. So sometimes I'll even carry it with me and be like, look, this is where she is. She's a -5. We need to make sure that we're really encouraging her. We need to make sure that we're not offering pain medications because it's important to her that she asks if she wants them. Um, so that's another really great tool. And the final part, I think, for partners, I mean, there's many other things for partners, but a really big one for partners is being the communicator. So you arrive at the hospital, you're not thinking about handing over your birth preferences or your birth plan. You're in it, you're in the thick of it. And so your partner's job is to say, this is the birth plan. This is what's really important to her. She really doesn't want an epidural. She doesn't want you to offer it. Or it's okay, we've already deviated from this birth plan because of some scenario. Say we're being induced and that wasn't on the birth plan. But can we please try and stick to everything else as closely as we can? So can we still have the dim lighting? Can we still have the nice music? And trying to stick to it even when some things have kind of become out of your control or the plan has changed for some reason.
Yeah, that control piece is so huge, isn't it? Because we know that there can be things that are out of our control when going through labor and delivery, but the more things you can have that you've already been thinking about or planning or trying or know that things are going to make you feel more comfortable, it can just really help things feel less overwhelming and out of
Mm.
your control, which, yeah, that's such a huge piece.
Yeah,
Um,
awesome.
this is something we talk about in classes, and I know you do too, because I think having a doula in the delivery room is such a helpful tool. Because partners, when they hear like, "Oh, this is my responsibility," but I'm over here freaking out too. Like
Yeah,
I'm over here like, "Oh my gosh!" I even though we took a class, I don't know what's going on. So
yeah.
taking the class and preparing and being on the same board is really helpful. At hospitals, you do have one-to-one nursing care. And then if you're really looking for extra support, having a doula in the room is just yet another person that knows the medical lingo, the processes that can help us sort of stay, okay, everything's all right. Here's where we're at. Like you said, okay, we're at a 5, so let's try
Yeah.
this. Um,
Mhm.
but what when it comes to like the hospital policies that you had mentioned earlier around like eating when you're in active labor, or even sometimes like if labors slow down or stall, sometimes because as much as we love hospitals and their staff and the IWK here is so fantastic, it is still also a business, and sometimes things feel like they're timed almost. Like, oh, I know that happened with me twice with my two first deliveries. Oh, you're at 6 centimeters still. It's been a few hours. Maybe
Mhm.
we should do XYZ to try to speed things up. Now, I always say to people in class, like, hey, if you're on board with that and you're like, yes, please speed it up, like, what can we do?
Mhm.
By all means, that's your prerogative. But I think it can be hard if we're like, I'm not sure, or do we have to, or like, I feel okay, is everything fine? I'm trying to have a low intervention birth, maybe. So
Right.
how can parents to be navigate these hospital policies and routines if they're really trying to make this low intervention birth work?
Yeah, great question. There's so many pieces to this. Where do I begin? One of them is trying to stay out of the hospital as long as possible. Like, really, there's kind of to some degree the hospital's role is to get you out of labor. Like, you have to
Right.
arrive and then you need to get out of labor and have a baby. Like, that's kind of their role. And also I always want to preface that with the fact that I also understand the pressures of the hospital. Like, it's not good for anybody if the hospital is completely full of birthing women who have been at 5 centimeters for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, and there's more and
Yeah.
more and more birthing people coming in. Like, to some degree, the systems that we're working within, they have constraints and we have to work within them. So trying to stay out of the hospital as long as you can is really crucial. And I do think that's a big way that doulas help, because I think for especially for first time parents, not knowing when you need to be there and that fear of like, what if my baby is born at home, and not
Yeah.
having someone
Yeah.
to call. I was thinking just earlier actually about like maybe I should need to have some kind of model that's like, even if you don't want to do late your birth, which I get, like I actually felt very strongly for myself that I wanted a very, very small birth team. When I had my kids, I didn't really know what doulas do.
Mm.
So I didn't have a doula myself. So I understand when people don't want a doula. They want something smaller. They want it to be really intimate. They don't want more faces in the room. They don't want to have to try and build a new relationship with someone. Then they already feel like there's a lot going on in their pregnancy. I get it. I wish there was kind of a model, again, I should just create it, where I could just be on call for someone to help them understand when they need to go into the hospital. I don't have to be at your birth, but I can help you know when to go in. Um,
Mm.
because
Because if
there
you
are
do call the hospital, they'll usually say come in because it's so much
usually,
it's so hard to
right,
assess over the phone when you're in labor and stuff. But
exactly.
that could be really helpful because that is a
Right.
big thing. We all
Yeah.
think we're going to be in the winter. It's like I'm going to be that one in the snowbank with my
Totally.
baby, or like what if it's right? Yeah, that's a big worry for sure.
That's coming back to the statistic thing too, right? And we see these stories on the
Yes.
news of someone who had their baby in a snowbank, and it's like, oh my God, that's going to be me. But like, that's one person in like however many years that happened to.
Yeah,
Although I
so
think
true.
one winter there was two, and I was like, oh no, there's two now. The statistics really going to
Liz,
people off.
that was the winter that I had my middle child, and
Oh,
there were two snowstorms that week. I was that person. I'm like, that's gonna be me. Luckily, it
yeah,
wasn't, but yeah,
it
it can
doesn't
happen.
happen very often. Yeah.
No, no,
And the moral of the story is that those babies and those mamas were just fine. Like everyone was fine.
and
Babies
now
are
they have
born
a great
all over the place
story.
all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
We all come out the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so just making sure that you are staying out of the hospital when you can, because as soon as you get into the hospital, if you go too early, you're sent home. That kind of triggers this fear, tension, pain thing of like, when do I go back in? You're fearful, there's more tension in your body, you experience more pain because you're more tense.
Mm,
And so we really are trying to get into this instead, like calm, comfort, confidence cycle. I'm calm. I'm feeling comfortable because I have a routine to my contractions. My partner is right here. I know when I'm supposed to go in, and that's the part that's really missing for a lot of people is they have no idea when they're supposed to go in.
mm,
So a doula kind of helps with that process. I listen on the phone. If I'm not sure, then I'll go to people's houses and kind of assess what's going on. And then sometimes I stay. Sometimes I'm like, okay, we can stay here. I think this is fairly active labor. I'll hang out with you here. And when it's really ready to go, when we're really ready to go, we'll go in. Or if it's early labor and they don't really feel like they need me and they really just need time together, then I'll say, okay, the two of you can get into a good routine. I'll help you find a routine. I'll coach you through it. I'll encourage you that your baby is not going to be born at home. You're still in early labor. And I try to be careful with my language, like still in early labor. I just slipped up and said it, but that can be really
yeah.
discouraging for people. So not using words like still or just or only or no change or those kinds of things can be really discouraging. So being
Which they can
encouraging,
use in the hospital because it's
right?
direct. It's they're
Yeah,
getting their point across to their team and what
right,
they need, but it is like the sometimes we hear quote unquote failure to progress. And like
right,
you didn't fail at
right.
anything, but
Yeah,
the set of
yeah,
circumstances that are happening around
totally.
it. Yeah.
And even things like you're not changing your cervix. Like I hear that from doctors all the time. You're not changing your cervix. Like, okay, well, let's be
But I told
transparent.
it to, like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just not
I'm working
listening.
on it. Yeah, exactly. I'm having fractions. Exactly. Yeah. So wording can be really triggering and just being really careful around that wording. Setting up a good and some people that sometimes that's all people need is they just need someone to go get them in a good routine, reassure them, and then leave again. Know that you can call them back if you need to. So that's I
Mm,
think also is like a big role of a doula, and especially in wanting low intervention birth is just keeping things calm at home and only going in when you really need to be in the care of a medical attendant, which is
mm,
when
hmm
you're imminently having a baby.
hmm
Um,
hmm
or there's other signs like if things are starting to look not like they're slowing down and they've been stalled out for a long time, you're very tired, then sure, that might be a reason to go in, but kind of helping triage that. um, I feel like I've gone way off the question now because I get so excited about talking about
Do you,
right,
if you weren't going to be at a birth, because I think if
mhm,
you were there, you
right,
are probably, I'm guessing that or at least one of the people that can be like the advocate or
right,
change. So let's just say you were helping a family prepare and you weren't going to be at their birth. What
right.
would be some ways that you would help them or prepare them to navigate what they're about to go through if they are looking for the low intervention
Yeah, good
side?
question. Yeah. So regarding going into the hospital, we're looking for like very key things. One of them is like if you have any bleeding, you're going to go right in. If you can feel anything passing down into the vagina, you're going to go right in. And then the other one that really, those two things are not very common. We don't see this very often. The third one that's really a key to go in is when you start to feel much more pressure. So when you start to feel pressure in your bum, that can mean baby's really low. It's time to go in. The rule they tend to use at the hospitals for when it's time to go in is the 4-1-1 rule. So contractions are about 4 minutes apart, lasting about a minute, and it's been that way for at least an hour. That's an indication that you're heading into active labor. That said, the reason they use numbers in the hospital system is because that's a tangible, measurable thing. But for most people, even when they get to the 4-1-1 rule, they're not in active enough labor to be admitted to the birth unit yet. So they will be held in the early labor assessment unit. What we're really looking for, and this is really hard to assess if you haven't had a baby before, is when contractions are really intense. So contractions start usually where you can kind of carry on your day through them. You're aware that the tightenings are happening, and then slowly it progresses to you're having to really focus on your breathing during them, and then it will progress to your moaning through them, and then the moaning usually gets kind of lower as baby gets lower. And then you start to kind of not be able to communicate with people around you during contraction. So you're aware that there's noise going on around you. You can't really focus on what people are saying to you. You definitely can't answer, like you can't answer the question when you're having a contraction. When you get to that stage, it's time to go in. Like at that point, it's like, okay, this is truly active labor. It's intense. You're having to completely focus on it. Most first-time mums don't get to that stage because they're like, okay, this is much more intense than I thought it was going to be. I got to go in now. And then they arrive too early, which is fine because then the hospital will say, okay, either you go home or you can go for a walk just around the hospital grounds and come back in 2 hours and we'll see how you're doing. And that's fine and completely normal as long as you're not getting into that mindset of, oh no, I'm not dilated enough. I've arrived and I'm not enough. That mindset is what tends to then get people kind of in this spiral of, okay, this isn't going how I thought it was going to go. I don't know if I should go home. Should I stay? I don't know if I can walk outside the hospital. I feel like these contractions are going to be really awkward to have in front of people. Spoiler alert, people outside the hospital are used to seeing people having contractions. Don't worry about what they think.
I actually actively look for someone in labor whenever I'm around because I want to see who's having a baby.
I know, it's exciting. Exactly. Yeah. And I always want to like cheer people on. I'm like, you're doing great. You'll be next.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's like totally normal. So that's kind of what to look for. And then again, coming back to partner, like if you do not have a doula, your partner is your doula and they're staying calm, they're taking charge. And again, I recognize how difficult that is when it's your first time going through it too as a partner. It's really challenging. My most uttered phrase to partners in the room is, this is completely normal. In your world, this might not be normal, but in my world, this is 100% normal. Like this, we see this all the time. And so kind of talking yourself through that as a partner, this is normal. This is normal. I know that this is going to pass. There's a really great acronym for pain during labor, PAINE. So the P is purposeful, like it's the type of pain that has purpose. You know why it's there. It's anticipated. You know what's going to happen. We talk about it all the way through pregnancy. It's going to happen. I'm going to be in pain, but it's going to pass. It's intermittent, so it comes and goes. So that's another tool I use a lot, is really focusing on those breaks. Sometimes in between contractions, people are in the mindset of, oh my God, that last contraction was really intense, or, oh my God, there's another one coming. And they're forgetting to focus on like, right now, you do not have one. Enjoy this beautiful moment where you don't have a contraction, take some deep breaths, relax your body. So that's the intermittent part. The N is it's normal. We know that it's normal to experience pain when your body's squeezing really tight, like that's completely normal. And then the last one is E. It ends. We know it's going to end. And so those kind of reminding your partner of those things, those 5 things, that it's purposeful, it's anticipated, it's intermittent, it's normal, and it's going to end, can be really reassuring. And reminding yourself as the person supporting, okay, I have to remind myself that this is a purpose, it's normal. Kind of those kinds of mantras. And then in avoiding hospital routines when you get there, asking for an experienced nurse. If you've decided that you want a low intervention or unmedicated birth, when you get to the birth unit, you can say, it really is important to me that I don't have an epidural, or that I don't have Pitocin added, or that we're really encouraging the use of a birth pool or something like that. Then you might say, could you possibly assign me a nurse who has experience in that, who's confident with that? Most of the nurses have experience with them, but they're always onboarding new nurses, and there are some who are new to it. And as is natural with anybody who's learning something new, they'll just be a little bit less confident in it. And birthing mothers pick up on the tiniest little cues of no confidence. So really making sure you have someone there who knows what they're doing.
That's such a great point, Liz. And I mention that too sometimes because it's so different if this medical community was coming into your house, what a
Mm.
different vibe that would be already, because this is your space and they're there to
Yeah.
help you. In this sense, we're going into their space, but they're still
Right.
there to help you. But it just becomes this like, you're the experts. You guys do this all day, every day. So you'll just inform me and tell me what's going
Right.
on and when. And again,
Mhm.
there can be a place for that too. But if you're looking for the low intervention birth, we do need to think about that a little bit more. And
Right.
also asking questions like, do I,
Yeah.
oh, we want to, if someone's saying this, we want to administer Pitocin or do X,
Right.
Y, and Z, maybe artificially rupture the membranes. Can you ask, or having partners ask, like, do we have to do that right now? What if
Right.
we said no? Can you come back and ask me in a half an hour? Is is
Right.
is it because the baby's not doing well? Like, what are the reasons? Because if it's really just to move things along, well, you can choose. Do you want to do that to move things along, or do you want to hang back and maybe try something different?
Right.
So
Right.
asking those questions, but feeling like you have the authority to ask questions is very
Right.
different when it's your first time and we're going into the hospital.
Right. And anytime, I'm asked a question and people sometimes preface with like, I don't know if this is a stupid question. And whatever the question is after that, I'm like, that's not a stupid question at all.
It
And I'm
never
really
is. It
sorry.
never
And I'm like,
is.
I'm really sorry I didn't think to tell you because when you get in, I have to try hard with this, and the nurses surely do, where you're like, it's your world and you're so used to seeing it that you might forget, oh, right, that the person I'm with doesn't know this. They don't know that this is like our normal protocol or like this is very normal in the labor environment. So whenever people
Yeah.
ask me something, they're like, is this a stupid question? I'm like, no, no, no. I should have told you beforehand. I should have remembered to tell you that this is what
Yeah.
happens when. So yeah, be just asking the questions. There are no stupid questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And feeling confident, like you said, to slow things down and say no. So I have another acronym for that. Actually, I'm a big acronym girl, which is BRAIN. So the informed consent acronym, you probably know this one already. Actually, is
Mm.
what are the benefits of doing whatever the intervention is right now? What are the risks of doing it right now? Are there any alternatives? The alternatives is a big one, because in the hospital setting they talk about bringing power to the labor. So we're talking about like if labor is not progressing, adding Pitocin to create more power in the uterus. That's kind of their go-to. There are alternatives in that we talk about the three P's, so power, passenger, and passageway. Can we create more space in the passageway? So can we help mum move her body in a way that creates more space for baby to move down? Then we don't need more power because we have the passageway change. So that's moving into positions like if baby's higher in the pelvis, knees further apart, you might be squatting with your knees apart. If baby's low in the pelvis, it's actually getting your ankles far apart. So that's like one alternative, tilting the tailbone different ways. And then the final one is the passenger. So we think about like what kind of position is the passenger in? Is the baby rotating down as they are most likely to, which is the most optimal way for them to be born? Or are they kind of facing the side still? And how can we move the body to help the baby move? So alternatives, coming back to my initial acronym, alternatives is like, okay, yes, one of our options is to increase the power, but what are our other options? The I in the
Mm.
BRAIN acronym is I can't remember what the I is. BRI. Can you remember what the I is, Ashley? Benefits,
Brain.
risks, alternatives. I can't remember what the I is. The
Oh
N
my
is
God.
I can't
Yeah. What
remember
is
it right now.
it?
It'll come back to me in a minute. We'll
I
loop back.
know.
The N is nothing, not now, need time. So hardly anything is urgent in the moment. We see on TV all the time, we see like, oh my God, we've got to go C-section right now. It's very, very unusual to see that. Oh, I remember what the I is. It's intuition.
I was just gonna
The
say,
I
like, I
is
can't believe you
intuition.
forgot that one.
I know. It's like I'm gonna come back to it. But actually I'm gonna come back to that in a second. I'm gonna finish N first. But N is nothing, not now, need time. Very infrequently is it we have to go right now. Sometimes we'll have seen like an unusual pattern in baby's heart rate. It might be that cervical dilation has slowed. And it's a pattern that happens over time, and you have time to say, I just need 5 minutes. If a doctor comes in, and often they come in two, so you've got two doctors, you've probably got two nurses, you've got your partner, and suddenly there's a lot of people in the room and they're all looking at you to make a decision, and you're like, I just need a second. And
Yeah.
so asking everyone, saying, do we have 5 minutes? Yeah, okay, great. Everybody leave, and you and your partner just have a conversation. Cry if you need to, because if there's a big change in plan, you might need to cry, and that's okay. And think about your next steps, like little by little, what are we going to do? Are we going to accept this intervention? Are we going to ask for more time? And just really slowing it down. So that's the N. Going back to the I, I'm actually a little bit grateful I forgot it because it's an important conversation around forgetting it. So intuition. We don't give credit to our intuition. There's a really cool study called the Iowa Gambling Study, and they had rigged sets of cards. And people noticed after 30 cards, something's not quite right, but I don't know what it is. And they started to favor the unrigged set of cards. After 80 cards, people knew. They're like, okay, that card set is rigged. But interestingly, they had them hooked up to a machine that sensed like their palm sweat and their behaviors. And that machine had told them after 10 cards, their body was telling them that something was not right. So before we have conscious thought that something is
Whoa.
happening, our body
Cool.
tells us. But because of how we're taught, especially I think in the Western world, we're taught like, okay, use your words. Like, even if we think about how we raise children, they'll be like freaking out. Like, I have he's not really a toddler anymore, but he likes to behave like a toddler.
Yeah.
And he's freaking out with his body. And I say to him, okay, Jasper, can you please use your words? So we're taught from a very young age, of course, it's important to use our words, but it's also really important to tune into like, what is our body telling us? Like, how do I do that translation from my body
Yeah.
reactions to my words? And that's the same thing. That's what intuition is. But we're taught from such a young age not to listen to it. And the other thing that really messes with it is anxiety. So if you have a lot of anxiety, that creates this self-doubt of, oh, I can't trust my intuition because it might be anxiety. And that's a really hard thing to navigate, especially when you're in a situation you haven't been in before, which in labor is often the case, first time around.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, so that intuition piece, it's ironic that I forgot it, but there was some talk for a while about removing the I from the brain acronym because so many people don't know how to tune into their intuition. I found that really sad when I read that. I was like, that's so sad that
Yeah,
people
well,
that
that we're
told
only
me
gonna get
that.
worse at it if we keep
Right.
pushing
Yeah.
it away. Like, let's not do
Right.
that.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
we need to be helping people tune into it. And this links really nicely to talking about, I think you had another question, Ashley, about like what if things don't go according to plan? What if things change? And how do we deal with kind of the emotional fallout of that after birth?
Mm-hmm.
And a huge piece of that, I'm doing my master's in counseling therapy right now, and I just did my course on trauma and crisis. And a huge piece of trauma and crisis, like mental trauma, is that afterwards people will say things like, I knew and I didn't do anything about it. Or I had this thought that I should ask and I didn't. And so knowing that people say these kinds of things afterwards, I always encourage people, like when I'm educating them during pregnancy or when I'm with them during birth, if you have a feeling, say it. Just say it. Even if the nurse says, no, no, I don't think that's what's going on here, at least you will know that you won't have the regret afterwards of like, why didn't I listen to my gut? So those being able to say
Yeah.
things is so important.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's keep on that train because that was my next question is what can parents do like to prepare emotionally if things don't go according to plan?
Yeah. And so again, it's about having, whenever I do birth plans, I talk about creating birth preferences. I think a lot of doulas work that way, where we, instead of having the word plan, which sounds very rigid,
Yes. Yeah.
and then if if you quote unquote fail that plan, it's kind of, it feels like everything's falling apart. Whereas preferences is, this is what I would really prefer to happen.
Yeah.
And making sure that you have all the education and the other things too. So some people go into labor with this tunnel vision of this is what I want, and they don't want to learn anything else because they're not interested. And so then what happens is when they get into a labor environment and interventions are needed, not only are they having to come around to the idea that their birth preferences have changed, but they're also now having to learn while they're in labor what it means
Yeah.
to vacuum, or what it means to how you have to sit to have an epidural, or
Uh,
so
uh
learning it all beforehand rather than being avoidant, which I think I would say I was a little bit before I had my kids. I was like, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear that. Like, that's not the birth I'm going to have. Learning
Yeah.
as much as you can beforehand. It's better to have the information and then be in the birth unit and not need it than not learn the information, get into the birth unit and be having to learn a bunch of things that you didn't know before at a time when you're at your most vulnerable and you're trying to process contractions and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, yeah. That's when we're more likely to experience a traumatic
Right.
experience when we're just like all over the place, had no idea. I feel that way when we talk about C-sections in class.
Right.
and watch a video and like really, because I'm like, do we need to see that? Do we need to know that? Because, it's on that side of the curtain and everything. But yes, I feel like we do need to know, as much
Yeah.
as like we don't want to put people in a place where it's like, I don't want you necessarily to believe that this is all going to happen to you, but like if we can
Yeah.
try to picture it, put ourselves in that headspace, look at what does even an operating room look like? What might I experience when I'm in there? That's that much less things that you need to think and worry about when you're in that moment. And you can
Yeah.
just think about getting yourself into that headspace to
Yeah.
be there. So yeah, planning, that's the big theme for today
Yeah.
is
Planning.
planning and preparation. We
Yeah.
got to do that and finding the right people
Yeah.
that can help us do that. Yeah.
And then after, like going away from planning, afterwards, it's also just about being so gentle with yourself, being able to look back and say, we did everything. There was nothing in my control that I could have done more. Um, the other thing is that all births are beautiful births. I love watching C-sections, which is actually really funny, I think, for people who know me to hear me say, because before I became a doula, part of the reason I was nervous about becoming a doula is because I was kind of squeamish. And I don't know if it's like the exposure therapy or what, but like now I love watching C-sections. I think it's like the coolest thing ever.
Oh,
And also that there's this kind of, I think, view, especially sort of with celebrities starting to have C-sections because, quote unquote, it's the easy way out. C-sections are not the easy way out,
they are not.
especially if
No.
you've labored beforehand. Like if you've labored and then you go to an unplanned C-section, you've just gone through the process of birthing and then had a C-section. And C-sections are super beautiful too. Like it's a really amazing process of babies being born into the world. And being accepting of that rather than seeing it as a failure is a huge piece of the emotional component and the debrief afterwards of,
Mm,
you did nothing wrong. Your baby was born. And now, you have a bigger challenge afterwards because now you have a body healing from surgery and you're taking care of a baby. So if anything, you have the biggest accomplishment ever. You're doing this incredible healing journey.
hmm.
Meanwhile, you're seeing yourself as a failure. Like it's at odds, and it's very related to culturally how I think it's kind of phrased and seen, especially sort of in celebrities and the pop culture. Yeah.
But yeah, just feeling like that. Yes, we were talking about the preparation piece, but the debriefing piece and the being
Mhm.
kind to yourself piece and the you did everything you could piece and you still
Yeah.
did great work and we got this baby out. And so I think I'm just assuming, because I know that would probably be the case for me, that if I was planning or hoping for a low intervention birth, but ended up needing a C-section, that feels like the
Mhm.
ultimate intervention.
Yeah.
It's trying to wrap my mind around that, but that
Yeah.
comes with preparing in advance and also getting some support maybe or how you are talking to yourself about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes it's a bit dismissive in that there's the goal in the hospital of healthy birther, healthy baby. Like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like your baby is healthy. You're healthy. You both survived, and many years ago you would not have. And
Right.
that's actually
So be
really
happy
not
about it.
right. It's
Yeah.
really not a helpful. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know if people should watch the Brené Brown video about sympathy versus empathy, where it's like empathy is really sitting with someone and being like, I know, like that really sucks and that was really hard. And sympathy is like, oh, at least you had a vaginal birth before, or at least your
Oh.
other child is really well behaved, or at least, like it starts with at least, right? Like, at least you have a healthy baby and you're healing from your C-section. At least you didn't die. Like, that's not helpful terminology for someone who.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of more helpful. And I mean, maybe this is also really great guidance for people who are supporting friends who've just had C-sections, is really sitting with people and saying, yeah, I'm really sorry, like that didn't go the way you wanted it to. And I know that really hurts. And then really affirming for them, you did everything you could. Nothing you did is what led to this. You are really lucky that you were able to have access to Western healthcare, but I know that's not what you wanted. And just reaffirming constantly, you did really well. It was nothing you did. You tried everything. I know
Hmm.
you worked really hard. So that it's not dismissive. It's really sitting with someone in their
Mm.
sadness, or sometimes feeling even like grief of what they didn't have.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. What they were expecting or hoping
yeah,
for. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, Well, this has been a really awesome conversation. Thank you so much, Liz. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to make sure you get across about low intervention birth? I feel like this whole conversation around preparation and how partners can be supportive and questions, those acronyms are awesome. And then the aftermath, the after
Mm.
like debrief or, take being kind to yourself piece. But was there anything else that you think is might be helpful to learn about this?
I mean, I think only sort of one last thing I'll throw in the end here is that there's also one other cultural myth that I think is important to talk to related to induction, which is kind of a big thing to end on.
Yeah, yes. No, let's do it.
But just that people often will say, okay, well, I'm going to do it unmedicated unless I'm given Pitocin, because there's this big scary P word, like Pitocin is scary and we can't do it
Right.
unmedicated.
It causes contractions to be harder or
Right,
worse of
right,
some kind.
right.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think is also very related to if you have support. I've been at several unmedicated deliveries where they were being given Pitocin. And all of them were people who, from the beginning, were like, I do not want to have an epidural. It's really, really important to me. It doesn't matter what interventions I have to have. I don't want one. And they had all kinds of reasons for that.
Uh-huh.
Um, and those people said that shutting out the noise. So one of them, she just went in the every room at the IWK upstairs has its own bathroom, and so she was like, I don't want people around me. I don't want machines, but I'm aware that because I'm having a hospital birth and an induction, there's going to be people around me. So she went into the bathroom and she closed the door, and she was like, people can come in and out, but I don't want people around me. I want it to be quiet. And actually, she was really hilarious because near the end, she was like, I'm having this baby in the shower. And the nurse was like, no, you're not. Not on my watch. Not on my watch. She was like adamant she's going to have a baby in the shower. So we got her out of we were in and out, like supporting her, but she really was just like in her zone. She had her drip pole with her in
Wow.
the bathroom and she was like hell bent. So getting, letting all the noise go away. She was pretending she wasn't in the hospital, even though she was on a drip of Pitocin. And just really tuning into that. And then I had another client who was like, she said she asked for an epidural before I even got there, and her husband messaged me and was like, "Come now." She said the E word. For her, like when you look at the Penny Simkin pain scale, you'll see why I supported her this way. But she had said, like, even if she asked for an epidural, don't give me one. I do not want one. If I call for one, it's not that I want one, it's that I'm just asking for more help. And so the husband was like, get here. So I
Uh-huh.
arrived, and after I got there, she never said the epidural word again because I was face to face, take charge routine. You're doing great. And she was on Pitocin and she had an unmedicated birth. So if it's really important to you, induction is not the end of the world.
Great.
And the inverse is true too, which is that if you have decided that you want an unmedicated birth, unless you're on Pitocin, that's fine. That's okay too, because Pitocin inductions are intense. But just, know that it doesn't mean everything has to fall apart. There are ways to feel
Mm-hmm.
supported,
Mm-hmm.
even if you have a Pitocin induction.
Mm. The one thing that I say to people if they tell me like, I do want a low intervention or natural birth, that would be my ideal scenario. What's the best way to achieve that? Or opposite, I don't want
Right.
intervention. I don't want a C-section. I will do anything to have that. What is my best chance of that not happening? And both answers are the same. I say, you got to get a doula. Because that, so I don't know if you were going to say that or not, Liz, but that to me, it's like you just explained it in that example right there. Like
Right.
sometimes even I'm like, I don't want the epidural, but I need more help. And
Yeah.
if we don't have that support or someone that can help us know that we are okay, and a lot of times
Right.
it is the partner. And so that's why we want to prepare the partner too.
Yeah.
But if we have a doula there, there's research behind this too, isn't there? There is a lower
Yeah.
incidence of unnecessary or unplanned C-sections and
Yeah. Yeah, there is.
unnecessary interventions because you've got someone that you're like, this person knows what they're doing. They have
Right.
confidence in me. I can get there too.
Right.
So that would
Yeah.
be a very big piece to it, and in
That's
amongst
true.
all this other stuff that we're talking about,
Yeah.
obviously.
I know. I'm like, I don't want to, I want to stay humble. I don't want to be like, get a doula. We're awesome.
I'll do it
But
for
it's
you
true.
because it's very, very, very true. And not everyone's going to
Yeah.
get a doula, and that's their prerogative.
Right.
But it's if that's really your goal. Same with if you've had a C-section and you maybe want to try and have a vaginal delivery, depending on certain criteria. But your odds are better with a doula
Yeah.
because they're like an extra bit of confidence in the room that we all kind of could use, I
Right.
think. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, totally. And I think also, we could probably have a whole other podcast on feedback. Maybe we should do that someday on
Oh,
pregnant
sure.
C-section. But also, I think that for someone who's had a previous C-section, you're automatically already put in a risk category, which means you get treated medically, um,
Right.
which, we can kind of pull apart a lot, but doulas can kind of help soften that and make you feel like, okay, I'm not someone who's had a C-section before. I am someone who's having my first vaginal delivery. And that is sort of a shift in
Mm.
language that makes a difference.
Mm.
But and related to what you said too, I mean, we probably should wrap up here. I could talk about this stuff forever, but
Right.
just a doula is someone who is able to support a partner and bring them in. I think there's also some concern that if there's a doula there, the partner gets pushed out. And it's really quite the opposite, where you have classes prenatally where you're taught what to do, but then you're in it and you're like, what the heck do I do? And a doula acts as an in-person coach to say, hey, partner, you could do this right now. Or, hey, partner, this is normal. Just look her in the face and tell her you're confident with her. And you're acting as a coach for the partner through it,
Mm.
and making them feel connected rather than like driven out by, I don't know what's going on here. The nurse is talking to her and I don't know what she's experiencing in her body. And it just creates more cohesion and like a bridge, I think, between partner and everything that's going
Yeah,
on.
not just for the birthing person.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's for
totally.
the whole
Yeah,
experience.
yeah,
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much again, Liz. It's always great to chat with you. And it sounds like we've got another topic for another episode another time. So we'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Okay, talk soon. Thanks, Ashley.
If you're looking for more information or support along your parenting journey, check out birthbabysleep.ca. That's where you're going to find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. Lastly, but certainly not least, if you got something out of this episode or our show in general, leaving a rating or a quick review goes a really long way to helping others find us. So please consider leaving one. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.